Okay, so the biggest story obviously is coming out at this point in time has to be CHAN 2024.
For sure.
Kicked off on the 2nd of August, running till the 30th. It was meant to initially start in February, but obviously because our stadiums are not ready.
Our being Kenya?
Well, it's a tri-hosting, so East
yeah.
Africa. So Kenya had to spend, 360 million, 350 million. Tanzania forked out another 36 million, and Uganda did 36 and Tanzania did 140. But the question for me right now with regards to preparedness, obviously we seem to be prepared and everything. And the games have kicked off well. Kenya got off to a good start. Tanzania has done very well. Uganda was a laughingstock of some viral video that went around. But for me, I was looking more at the Kenyan team. The incentive. 1 million shillings to each player for winning a game.
Yes.
So National Treasury has now forked out 42 million, minus taxes, right? But is that a reason why you'd want to play the beautiful game?
Well, I think, we see it all the time, isn't it? That folks are saying they play for the love of the game. But you can't rule out the incentive. I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen the president, make promises, which interestingly enough, he's already paid out.
Yeah, and a lot of people are shocked, like, okay, he's managed to do that,
which
is fine.
In West Africa, there are many football players who live in houses that have been gifted to them by the federal government.
Okay.
And cash prizes are all the rage. The Super Falcons just won the Africa Championship.
Yes, yeah.
And they've been gifted, momentous things by the Tinubu government. So this is what we're talking about, that it would appear as though cash incentives are huge things when it comes to sporting activities. For you to do anything beyond the love of the game, raise the profile of the country. It's a big deal.
Okay, so you're telling me if that incentive was not there, Kenya would not have bothered winning the first game?
I don't think that the verve would have been as potent as it was.
Yeah, okay.
If you've got 1 million shillings on the other side of the net, chances are that you're going to be putting that ball in the net as often as you can.
Okay, minus tax, of course.
Of course.
All right, what else do you have?
Well, all right, then we saw that Russia was also getting a
addressing down
by the United States.
Yeah.
It looks as though this week the United States is the one who is the teacher with her glasses on the tip of her nose, looking down upon those who may have been misbehaved, and is going to ask them to sit in the corner for a timeout.
So the sanctions that are being proposed, and this sanctions actually might also extend to China as well. Just something I've seen also just very quickly. Germany, Germany has said they're going to stop selling arms to Israel. Yeah. Obviously. The whole 2 wars are kick off within the space of 2 years. Ukraine, Russia first kicked off, and then now you have Gaza, Israel. And now Israel is saying they're going to occupy Gaza. Yeah. They've passed that and said, we're going to. Well, they've made the intention to go and occupy Gaza.
And I think we've seen this week that the description of the war then has used Israel as an adjective more so than it has before. It is now the Israeli massacre of Gaza. It is the Israeli, genocide in Palestine. That's what we hear. That Israel, for the first time in a long time, is being used in an adjective manner, and that's quite something when you think about it. But it looks as though now the frowns are starting to turn in the direction of Israel.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we'll watch this space, I guess.
Indeed.
All right. From Cairo to Cape Town, Lagos to Lamu, 54 nations, one continent, countless perspectives. Hi, my name is Waweru Njoroge.
Hi, I'm Nduoko.
Welcome to Panel 54. This is the podcast where we unpack people, power, policy, and the paradoxes that define our time. With nuance, with history, and a deliberate commitment to context. This isn't punditry, it's perspective. It's not a briefing, it's a reframing, and it starts right here.
Today's conversation isn't just about football, it's about obsession, identity, aspiration, and contradiction. It's about how a game invented elsewhere somehow became the heartbeat of African Saturdays, the background music of border borders, and the one place where millions of African youth still believe their talent might actually change their lives.
As CHAN 24 kicks off across Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and just before the Premier League returns, we ask, what does football mean to Africa? And why does it matter so deeply to us?
Joining us in studio are two people who live and breathe this world. Cynthia Mumbo, sports industry strategist and founder of Sports Connect Africa, and Musa Abdi, broadcaster, journalist, and walking football encyclopedia.
Karibuni.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. What a lovely intro.
Wow, this is who you are. Right. So, I mean, thank you for being here today. Of course, we want to get into it and ask, first of all, how did you get into the sports world and start this whole, what we're calling obsession, Cynthia?
Well, sports is my life, literally. I was introduced into sport by a legend of the sport when I was still a kid. He was like a brother to me, the late Benjamin Ayimba, and he used to make us run when we were kids, me and my friends, and naturally I would win. And so he used to give me his medals, and I really loved the whole idea of being in a space where I was winning, and really that just kind of got me there. From there I got into high school, and I remember watching the NBA, and I really just wanted to be like those guys, but there was no space for women. So either way, I got into school, decided to play basketball. The first day I held a basketball, threw the ball, went in, never looked back, and I'm here today.
Okay. Musa?
Wow, that's actually such a pretty lovely story. For me, it's a little bit different. I have 5 older brothers.
Okay.
So I really didn't have a choice in terms of what is being watched on TV and stuff like that. And my first birthday gift, I remember when I was 3 years old, I was given a basketball rim by my mom, and I just played. Obviously, you're 3 years old; it's not really competitive or anything like that. And then 2001 FA Cup final, Liverpool won against Arsenal. Michael Owen,
sensitive.
Michael Owen scores 2 goals in the last 10 minutes, and I just fell in love with Liverpool. Decided to get into this is because it's what I'm good at, and so if you're good at something, find a way to make it pay you.
Okay. Do you play?
Not anymore, and I was never that good. I was good at talking about it.
Okay. All right, I want to get into it now. We are going to look at, you just mentioned now Liverpool and Arsenal. We're looking at least to set the stage, right, in terms of what we're looking at what football means to Africa. But I want to take a step back and look at how the Premier League has become probably one of the most watched cultural rituals in Africa. Yeah, in pretty much any city you go to. You've got people sporting Arsenal, Man U, Liverpool, badges everywhere, basically. So now the question is, it's not necessarily an unusual thing to see. But when you look at the aspect of, from an African perspective, why is it that we will probably line up outside sports bars, outside bars, to actually watch a Man U Liverpool game, but will not necessarily do the same for local league games?
Because Man United and Liverpool and the Premier League, and I would say the Premier League as England's greatest export, has just got us by the chokehold. It is what we love. It's also, like you said, across the entire continent. You'll find people in other cities with those badges everywhere. I think humans inherently need a sense of community. So you hear people say stuff like, we won, we did this, exactly. We did that. And it's just, it's the best thing in the world, isn't it, as well? It's football. Right. Specifically for the Premier League, they've got their exporting sports business to a T.
Okay.
So what do they do that Africans don't do, Cynthia? And maybe this for you, because these are players, interestingly enough, made up to a large extent by African players.
Yeah.
What is it that they do that exports this in such a wonderful manner that doesn't happen on this end of the pond?
So I'll speak about it from the business perspective.
Okay.
Everything in business is an investment first, right? You invest and you expect returns. And so what the English Premier League has done extremely well is they've invested in the product that is the English Premier League, the brand that is the English Premier League. If you remember, it was the Barclays
Yes.
Premier League, and they've done such a really good job of transitioning to the English Premier League because they realized that the core of the product is the English itself, the English Premier League. And so they've done quite a big job at positioning the brand that is the English Premier League. We were just having a conversation earlier, and the EPL was free to air for the first about, I think, 7 to 10 years across the world. And so it was free on your KBC, it was free on your free-to-air channels. And what that did, if you remember well, we had Bundesliga before.
Yes, we did.
And that took over from Bundesliga. And
Football made in Germany.
yes,
Yeah.
and while there was investment behind the English Premier League, there was a stagnation behind our local leagues. So they grew from a commercial perspective in terms of just how they were positioning their brand. And locally, we were going backwards where we didn't have the right kind of people who were, managing sports at a business level. So we stagnated. And the fan still wants that sense of community. So what happened? We found Arsenal. We found Arsenal.
We do
That's
say
a
so.
bombastic
Arsene
side
Wenger,
eye.
Arsene Wenger, and this is an interesting statistic. 60% of Africans who watch the EPL are English Premier League fans. Why? It was a very simple thing. He picked 10 African players and put them on his team, and guys who were connected to the African, player thing. And that's the thing, that it is a business decision. If you listen to the gentleman who was in charge of the EPL at that time, he was very strategic. They were very strategic. They said, in 10 years, this is where we're going to be. And in 30 years, we are going to be the best sports league in the world. And so that is, from a marketing perspective, in the minds of who is running the league. But, me as a Kenyan or a Nigerian or whatever, we sit there and we watch people who look like us, and we want that. But also there's the consistency. Sports is about consistency. It's not a short-term thing. I'll segue a little bit to a brand that I totally understand how they work, the NBA. And so they look at every aspect of that sport on the pitch as a media asset. Same thing with the EPL. The player is a media asset. The pitch is a media asset. The coach is a media asset.
And Musa can name the entire Liverpool team.
Probably.
But
With in jersey order as well.
Oh my goodness.
But there was something you said earlier on. You asked about, is it just a better package or is it actually better football? When it is better packaged and better branded, then you now get the best coaches, the best players, which will turn it into a better spectacle as a game.
Right.
But football is football. It's put the ball in the net. End of story. Or, past the keeper.
It's called a beautiful game.
Indeed, it is, because it's simple.
So, the world takes note of the tournament, which is CHAN, which, interestingly enough, a lot of people confuse CHAN with AFCON, two totally different tournaments. And it should be that CHAN is a breeding ground for domestic football, right? Are we actually seeing that happening here? Because here we are saying Africans and youth are looking up to these players that they see on the world stage every weekend, and even sometimes during the week. So is this actually breeding what should come about as, world-class football?
So the CHAN was started, I believe, in 2009. So it's something that has just been launched by CAF not too long ago. I guess 15 years, as we said, in sport. It's a long-term investment.
I think this is the 8th edition now that is coming.
So in that time, I know of one player who was playing in Mali at the time, and now got his break from there and went on to play in the Premier League. That's Yves Bissouma. He was in I think 2015 maybe, a couple of years ago. Don't quote me on that.
Because it was 2009, because it was DRC who won 2009 and 2016.
Yeah.
So the 2000...
They had the Fimbu song.
Yes.
Because they started switching the years, so it doesn't...
This is 2016,
Okay, so one of those ones. Yves Bissouma, a player who is now playing in the Premier League, had his chance from, like you said, the breeding ground that is CHAN. Maybe his coaches recognized him. The coaches now who... scouts from other countries were probably watching these things, and he got his break, got to France, got to whatever, and now he's up the highest level. So there is opportunity, a chance for this, but as we said, it's going to take time.
So if we know the things that it can do, because again, one of the biggest enterprises in the world that is bringing in millions of dollars is sport, football, the greatest game on the continent, on the globe. And we say that this continent is the breeding ground for some of these greatest players. Why can't we click?
I like that resigned sigh.
This is very
asking this
personal.
question.
This is what I live every day. One of the reasons why I didn't go to live in Europe or in UK or in US or whatever is because I made it my personal mission to make sports work at home.
Okay.
He said something and I almost wanted to punch him, but I'm sorry. because our definition of making it is going to play in the EPL.
You got me. You got me.
Yeah, and I was looking at you like, but I get
Ah.
it. And that's just the culture that my definition ni kwenda maju, you know?
Yeah, but okay,
Go
and
out there.
this will
And-
probably
and-
come up a bit later. We need, for African football, we don't need to make ourselves EPL light. We make ourselves
That's
EPL
it.
proof, and we make ourselves EPL proof. It means, that notion to want to have to go play Maju, then becomes pride, and that's what I'm saying. If Chan is looking at Chan 2024 is meant to be looking at local pride. Are our players actually playing for their country, or they're paying for money?
That is actually what happens, that everyone is working so hard to go and play in Europe. Everyone's working so hard to go and play someplace else. And we have to understand that there's not enough space for everyone else out there. But then there's so much opportunity for us to create our leagues and make them commercially viable for our players. The only problem we have is we want to make the money that is in Europe, and it's not sustainable. If we have to do that, we have to wait another 20, 30, 40 years.
We're talking Africa,
Right?
so
Yes.
that might take
Maybe another
a bit.
100 years.
And the reason why, and I don't mean I didn't know.
I'm optimistic.
You give me
just-
20.
yes.
20 optimism.
I'm being optimistic. I'm just looking at it this way.
So is there a lot of time that's spent then chasing that dream, which perhaps will not come to reality? Because if you're looking at earning, 525,000 pounds like
a
Erling
week.
Haaland a week.
It's not going to happen, guys. Let's
Is
be
it going to
realistic.
happen in Nairobi? Is it going to happen in Lagos? Is it going to happen somewhere in Johannesburg or Dakar? Is it going to happen that clubs, football, is going to start paying Africans that kind of money if we manage and package it properly?
Why not?
I like that question because that's exactly what it should be. However, getting £525,000 or whatever a week is just one big lump sum. It's just a big number, What I think she's saying is looking to create a system where guys are paid livable wages, where you're living comfortably. So
Sustainability.
yeah, so like if you're getting 525,000 Kenya shillings a week, that's still a lot of money. Think about it. Like nobody's earning that salary here, But if you scale it down to a level, like just exactly what you said, somebody's making $5,000 a month playing professionally in Africa, that's pretty good, you're doing well, your family will, your family will eat, your kids are going to school, the important things. And sports career is often a short career. It's a young person's game, So like you said, that the girl who bought her cow and now she has this and this. I think another thing players need to learn is that your career is a short time. So you're
wealth
getting
management
money,
is something I think that also needs to be inculcated
It's a very, very big issue.
in terms of our athletes across the board, basically our sports
The
people.
other challenge we have on the sporting side is having the right people doing the right jobs. So, if you get into a club, there's a whole hierarchy of guys. So just like any corporate office, we need to be able to corporatize our football teams so that you have your general manager, you have your business operations, you have your sports operations, you have, so your back end is organized, you have your marketing team but you have professionals.
If you were in Nairobi or Lagos, or if you were in parts of Johannesburg, and a match like that was taking place, you would imagine that it was the national teams of those countries that were playing. But it's two Premier League teams in a little country, and I say little country because it is, in a little country like England, but it's blown up all over the world. What fills the stadia? It's not filling just the stadia in England, it's filling the world. So what fills stadia?
It's the experience. It's really simple. It's
The atmosphere.
experience. It's the atmosphere.
So why
It's
don't
the
we?
sense of
What does it take to?
back end?
What does it take to
What does it
build
take to
the?
build?
What does it take to build?
What does
Because these things, I'm sorry, but these things are all connected, are they not? We talk about
There's
the policy that's
an
needed to be
ecosystem,
created.
yes.
You talk about the stadia that, for example, after a tournament like Chan, what's going to happen to that stadium? But if teams were regularly practicing, you wouldn't have had to worry. Chan would have been held in February, for example, because you have stadia that are, well, it would have been if you had teams that were playing consistently and you had to maintain.
You get gate charges and you were able to then use that too.
So what fills stadia that
Gate charges is a very
I know, but
business
it is,
model,
but it's
right?
something to
Talks
start
the
with.
business model,
Okay.
but at the same time, advertisers are flocking. This is the business model that we're talking about.
So let me-
So you don't
let
have
me
to
answer that
worry.
question.
So how do you
Let me
fill
answer
them?
that question. What's a brand?
Hmm.
A brand is a promise. What does Gor Mahia evoke for the longest time? Not now. I think now they're a bit settled. What did they evoke? Insecurity.
Yeah, that's
Stone
one.
throwing.
In fact, I didn't want to say that, but yeah,
No, I'm justified.
you'll own that.
Yeah.
You can do it.
I
You
can do
can
it,
own it, yeah.
and because it's personal, I have a love for that team, and I know that there's transition, and they're going to be doing well pretty soon. But that's the thing. What does Tusker evoke? Probably a team like Tusker. It's off the pitch. It's what I go and take wherever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily something that I relate with football.
No.
Right? So a brand is a promise. Let's just start there. That there's no promise for me to leave my house to come and experience this promise that you're going to deliver good entertainment.
So going to Kasarani Moyo does not.
Yeah. I actually had a post on Facebook yesterday, right after the game, because I mean, for me, it was more than just going to watch the game. It was the whole experience and trying to understand why are people here and all of that. These questions that you're asking. There's always been this notion that Kasarani is too far. Mwache Kweka, stop putting the games at Kasarani. And I said, guys,
Far from where?
exactly. Far from where? There's always a notion that it's too far. We can't. Yesterday, there was people walking. 30,000 people decided to walk because, well, it's too much traffic. It's whatnot. Why? Because the experience, the promise of a great experience. Now, the thing about sport is that you must deliver on that promise consistently. That's why you have to have a back office that has a strategy. You have to have strategic intent to say that in 2 years, this is what we're going to look like. In 4 years, this is what we're going to look like. In 10 years, this is what we're going to look like. But to get us to the 2 years, these are the small things that we need to do. So what makes a team what it is? The sporting excellence, good governance, understanding your fans. Very, very important. Because it's marketing. If I don't understand what my people need, then what am I selling? What do they need? You'll find that yesterday we had tons of kids come. There were so many parents with kids. But why? Because there was a promise for safety, right? And it was safe. There was a promise of a good entertainment without any issues and whatnot. I could get there and get back home. And those sound like very simple things, but anybody who's in the world of sports operations will tell you that that's what important. There were clean toilets, guys.
Yeah, there were.
Something you would assume would be so
That's
basic.
actually the first thing we think about whenever we're planning a sports tournament is, do we have clean toilets? Because there's a whole bunch of people who sometimes don't even come to watch the game. They come to just hang out because guys are hanging.
The atmosphere.
They don't even know the football. And those are the people you want to target because they will come every other day and give you the money. So you have your diehard fans who you must cater to. You have your everyday guys who you must cater to. You have children who you must cater to. You have pregnant mothers who want to come to the game. But it's a promise. A brand is a promise. And so like every other brand, if I'm going to get into a Mercedes, I know I'm going to be safe. What will my sports brand have? But I have to deliver on this promise consistently. And I have to understand that I'm not just competing with the other team. I'm competing with somebody who needs to buy airtime. So is he going to spend 1,000 shillings on airtime, or is he going to spend 500 shillings on airtime and 500 shillings on coming to my
stadium,
or is he going to sit and watch the English Premier League
in the safety
at the
of his
same
home
time, the safety of his home, and buy a drink and have it with his friends in the house? Probably spend 3,000 or 5,000. How do we convince the guy who's spending 5,000 shillings with his friends in the bar to spend 2,500 shillings from that share of pocket? And this is pure commercial conversation. How do you get that share of pocket to come? But it's purely based on consistently delivering on a promise, to know that, if I need to know the fixtures,
First of all, let's start there.
Hmm.
Or get local media to put the fixtures on regularly, things
But
like
then
that.
now you're
How
talking
folks working
aspects
together.
of broadcast rights.
There you go.
Yes,
Broadcast
so
rights.
when you
So
go
where your
about there,
broadcast,
so
where
then
your
you have,
broadcast rights.
so the first thing we always have is Bampton seats and then eyes on the screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so there's something special when you said about is the person going to sit at home and watch Premier League instead of coming to the stadium. Did you know in England, so in Kenya we get the Premier League is 2:45, 5 p.m., 7:30, and then Sunday is different. But those 5 p.m. games is where you have like 5-6 games going on at the same time. They're not broadcast anywhere in England on TV.
No, they're not.
Yeah, so that the second
go
tier
to the
teams and whatever
stadium.
guys go to the stadium and support their local teams, and
Yeah.
then these teams continue to exist, and then you have the stadiums that have always been there, and it all just comes back into the full circle of being governed and being run in just like, as you said, in a smooth and consistent way.
You're wearing a Liverpool top.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I trust you immediately.
In this case, he is alone. In this case, he is alone.
I completely trust him.
He's walking alone.
But statistically, at least for this market, sports companies, betting companies are the ones who sponsor teams, and not your brands like your Standard Chartered's or your ABSA banks or and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that then translate in terms of, I mean, okay, money is money, I guess, at the end of the day. But why is it that we don't have our top tier blue chip companies sponsoring local teams? I like the way she's smiling, she's just like, I know the answer to that.
The foot is tapping.
Well, it's because the betting companies have a guaranteed return on investment, and as she said, if let's give it KCB, no, but they have a team. That'll be,
Which they shouldn't.
yeah, that's a whole other thing, by the way. Let's give it ABSA now. Let's say ABSA Kenya Premier League, whatever. That the investment for ABSA to get their money is a long term deal.
As Cynthia was saying, yeah.
Yeah, and before the Barclays Premier League was the title, whatever. They're still sponsors to this day because they gain something from it. Mm-hmm. But betting companies know that if they offer a guy 1,000 free whatever on your first bet, the guy's gonna bet and he's going to lose, and the betting company makes money. It's the quickest return on investment for them, I think. Perhaps.
Value proposition.
Okay.
What's in it for me?
Yeah, and that's always the question.
One, and two, are we speaking the same language?
Okay.
Today we're in the language of values. So a lot of the guys who go to the brands to say, hey, we want to sit down, or guys within the sports space who go and sit with the brands, one, they don't speak the commercial language. So that word value proposition is not one of those things. They go and say, we need help.
Handouts.
Yeah, corporates are not in the business of helping anybody. That's not my core business, because I'm accountable to my shareholders, and so my shareholders will ask me, where did my money go, and why, if it went there, why is there a war there, why are guys fighting and this and that. I don't want my brand around that. The other thing is, the guys on the corporate side just don't understand sports.
Okay.
Right? They just don't understand sports. It's a lot of work when they think about, why do I want to? You need to have somebody in between who can, kind of sit and say, okay, brands, this is what you want for your consumers. This is where we can put you. And then the sports guys come back and you tell them, guys, okay, you have the sport. How are you going to deliver value to brand A, B, C, D? Because their core business is not activating. So if you go and watch the games, the Chan games that are going on right now, you will see ABSA, you will see whatnot. There's not ABSA, but Total. You will see.
Yeah, so Total Energy.
You'll see
Yeah.
Total. You'll see the betting company and one expert, I think. And
Oh
so
yeah,
on
sorry,
and
yeah,
so
I think
forth.
it's one.
But you'll see all those brands. But then there's a whole agency that their job is just to activate. We've not even activated properly in for China.
Yeah.
They were shocked. I'll tell you, Kenyan fans are special because, and we know that we've always been a very special bunch.
We're terminally unique.
I'm not shocked at the turnout
Yeah.
of the Kenyan fans. A lot of people have, and so they didn't even invest heavily behind the activation of the brands. But then that's the thing. A corporate wants to know that I'm going to give you this kind of resource, and this is the return I'll get. But then my brand will be activated and people will interact with my brand through your platform, and this is what I will be able to get in return. But it's a lot of work. Again, there's a whole back end that is required for that. And there's an understanding that needs to be had at the sport level for you to be able to sit down with a marketing manager of a brand and say, I understand you, I understand your consumer, I understand this is what they're looking for, and I think we're the perfect match because we'll speak the language of your consumer through your brand, and you'll be able to get A, B, C, D.
Let's zone out a little bit, zoom out rather, and we look at let's not zone out, but let's zoom out, and we look at, you know, the biggest sporting activity, again, the World Cup, biggest football, biggest world global activity, whether it's sports or not, it is the biggest one. We've only hosted it once on the continent in South Africa in 2010, and there's always been chances for bid to try and come back to the continent. But the question is, where you will have, you know, at least 20 of the African countries playing in that tournament, but the chances to host it again, apart from a country outside South Africa, does it seem to be dimming? And then why have we never had an African country win this tournament?
Every 4 years we pray for the biggest miracle in the world, but it almost never happens. And what's funny is we almost never, like you Africans, I feel like, unless for Kenya, our country has never been to the World Cup, unfortunately. So for example, Nigeria, when Nigeria goes to the World Cup, everybody in Nigeria is supporting Nigeria. It's not like, oh, I like England and then Nigeria, you know.
We must throw in that in 1996 Nigeria did win Olympic gold. That's probably the
I
closest
remember
that we've come to
Nwankwo
such a thing.
Kanu.
Yes.
And another story, Nigeria has won the under-20 World Cup a couple of times, but those players are still the players who, you know, like you play against this under-20-year-old, in 5 years he's going to be 25 and you're going to be 25.
What's
but Argentina will win now.
In between those 4 years, guys.
Yeah.
What's the investment behind?
Is this the reason why we don't win the World Cup? Is this the reason why we're not going to host it again for the
foreseeable future? We are hosting
Morocco, Spain, and
Portugal.
This is the first time we'll have a triple country hosting of the World Cup.
No, the second.
Second for the World Cup?
Yeah, the USA is this year. USA, Canada, and Mexico.
Canada.
Well, that's this year. Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Next. So
it hasn't happened yet. So probably that's the second time that happened.
Yeah.
But then on the African continent, many would argue, okay, well, we're looking at the northern part of the
So what I'm hearing is we need a lot of money.
It's a huge investment.
That's
Sports
what's going to
is
take.
not cheap. Look at the numbers you were talking about.
Yeah.
I sit on the board of the Kenya Academy of Sports. As we speak, there are 37 academies being built across the country. And very simple, we've said we don't have to be like Europe. So what are we doing? We're working with schools and communities through the MPs and through the COG, the COG's
Council of
Governors, right, through the COG. And so the government has set aside 2.3 billion to put up these stadiums. So football pitch, running track, and it's Maram because Tartan track is quite expensive. Running track, football will double up as rugby, a volleyball pitch outdoor, basketball pitch outdoor, netball, and then each academy will have some sort of structure that's going to be put together for changing rooms and stuff like that. This is stuff that's probably not being talked about, but you can see the progression. The other day we had Talanta Hela tournament at high school level where kids were playing, and you know we've seen Kibet, who is now going to this Celta Vigo. He came through those ranks. We saw the women's team made it to the Junior World Cup, is it?
Yeah, the one in the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
It was the Under-17
World Cup.
Girls, I guess.
It's because of
these academies.
The Kenya Academy of Sports. What they have is technical. They have a technical department that, you know, we walk around, have tournaments and stuff like that, but have scouts that go down on the ground. We have a facility up in Kasarani where we house them over the holidays. Actually, a couple of months ago, we just had during the holidays about 3,000 kids in a camp and whatnot. So these things are happening. I think it's a good space to, you know, see that there's some sort of conversation happening at the development level. There's still a lot for us to learn and a lot for us to be able to kind of put together as a country and as a continent. But I think that I'm happy to see that there's some sort of investment and there's some sort of conversation happening. Just the other day, FKF signed two 2 deals within a week. I don't think I've ever seen that ever.
Magical
the
Kenya.
first one I thought was a bit of a raw deal. They should have signed more, but that's a conversation for another day. But yes, then there's the partnership with Magical Kenya. For 6.
That is such a beautiful.
You can see that, especially at the Kenya level. Tanzania is a whole different ball game when you talk about Yanga and Simba and Azam there. Uganda. Where are my Ugandan people? But yeah, Uganda have also invested quite a bit in sports. So the fact that we're hosting, there was a conversation around what happens after.
Yeah.
My hope and my prayer is that people within the sports world are going to be allowed to do what they need to do. I've not followed what's happening in
Zanzibar.
I've not followed what's happening in TZ and what's happening in Uganda. So I think
just follow the video that came out about what's happening in Uganda. That was social media is kind of brutal sometimes.
It is. And
so top 4 EPL.
Sure. Top 4. I say Newcastle, Chelsea, City, Arsenal, Liverpool.
In that order.
Speech Arsenal and City actually.
Okay, but Liverpool top.
Yes.
Inshallah.
Arsenal. Okay, Arsenal, Crystal Palace.
Oh wow.
Okay. Guys, I know we're a middle table club. So yes, but yeah. So I think Arsenal are gonna take it.
All right. Not even top 5.
No, okay. Fair enough.
Wow, that's an unhinged goal. That's a good one.
Man City fan, he refused to follow Arsenal, so I'll never give them top 4.
That's another thing. The young kids these days, that's their team. That is their team, and you ask them.
They know that as the winning team.
I was 9 when Aguero joined, or something. Not me.
Actually, kids who are between the age of, I would say 0 to about 18, 19, their mind is only Man City. You cannot convince them of anything else.
Don't know who
Think
Chris
about
Ochieng
it.
is.
Think about it.
They don't know who Elly is.
That's why Cynthia's given them 10 years to get this thing done, so that by the time they
turn 19,
we
don't have 10. The next season, hopefully, I'll be sitting with FKF trying to help them kind of understand how to position. But the partnership that they have with the new partner that has come on board has 40% going to administration. So my hope is that at least 20% of that will get into marketing and building the FKF brand. So the KPL brand, and not the KPL brand.
Okay.
KPL brand.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been a very interesting conversation. I know it's very passionate, and that's why once you start talking, the most passionate people can talk about
business of emotions.
Passionate
business of
about
emotions.
Football and politics.
It absolutely is the business of emotions. Thank you for having me.
No. Thank you for having me too.
The conversation actually is going to continue. We're going to continue talking more about Chan 2024. We're going to be joined in studio by Chris Ochieng, who is Goma midfielder, yes?
I believe so.
No, sorry, he's a striker.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Ochieng is Goma striker. She didn't even correct me on that.
Guys, that's the first time I don't know anything.
Oh, gosh, you caught her off guard.
You guys shouldn't hear me.
And the other guest we're going to have
We'll clip this and post it on TikTok.
Guys, please, nobody took that.
We'll cut that out, right?
Put a wanted sign as well.
And then Elly, who is the midfielder and captain of Mathare United. So the conversation is going to continue. But guys, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having us.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
And we continue the conversations Matters Football on panel 54, and we're joined by Chris Ochieng, who is a striker for Gor Mahia, and Elly Asieche, who is the midfielder and captain of Mathare United. Karibu, guys, welcome. So straight off the bat, I'll start, whoever wants to take this first by all means, what made you, or what was that point where you realized I want to play football?
For me, I think it just came naturally. I was doing it for fun at a very young age, and it was back in 2017 where I decided to go for trials at Mathare United, coincidentally.
Okay.
Yeah. So through that trial, I think Coach Francis Kimanzi, a big shout out to Coach Kimanzi. He's the one who scouted me back then, and he saw potential in me, and that's how my football journey began.
Okay. In terms of scouting, do we have? I mean, I know we're looking at this episode from the perspective of Chan, and we've talked about the business side. But I don't look at. Is the talent scouting here to a level where we can actually say that we can actually pick the best possible crop that we can get?
Looking at the facts the way they are, I think the scouting is not top notch yet, because if you look at the people in the national team currently, no pun intended, but there are some other people who are actually better than the ones that are there. So that having that even in mind, even me telling you that, shows you that there's something that's totally missing, because we can't all be in the national team, but someone cannot be better than the other guy who's in the national team. So I think the selection for me is not top notch, but we really have a good team.
So who's making the decisions? So who is actually doing this scouting? Or is there a different game afoot? No pun intended, but...
I think it's the coaches from the national team. But they can't do the job alone. They need the scouts. So we need to improve on that.
Yeah. Okay, so if you take a bigger look or a deeper look into Chan, what's happening, we know that it's right at the doorstep of club football, for domestic club football.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around the tournament, how it's organized, the different players and how they're selected to join the national teams? Harambee Stars, for example, one team in the running. Look across the continent, teams coming in from, Senegal, DR Congo, Morocco, Angola, around the country. Is it really then fostering what it's supposed to do when it comes to bringing up the game of football around the continent?
Yeah, starting with the preparation and the organization for Chan, that's kudos for them.
Okay.
I've attended the last 2 matches. In terms of preparation and everything, I can say it's top notch. Talent wise, I can also say it's Africa is at home now, and we've managed to see a lot of talents from within and outside, and I think our talent is much better. Even if you witness the games that we've played even yesterday, I think we put up a good show, and I think Kenya has something to offer.
Okay.
Yeah, in as much as Chan is concerned.
Elly?
I think Chan is going to help us improve our game. At least now, it's happening around. We are not focusing on our league, but how CAF are managing the tournament. So we need to pick 1 or 2 things so that we can improve our game here.
Sure. What are folks being paid? Let's be honest. Let's be candid. What are we looking at in terms of earning that? Because we look at these things on a global scale.
Yeah.
When we look at clubs, which I know you support Manchester United.
For real.
All right. When we look at clubs...
I'm going to come back to that.
We're going to come back to that in a minute. But look at clubs that you support and look at the kind of monies that these boys are paid, right? What are we looking at here? And we know that aspiration, we want to get somewhere at some point.
Ballpark figures. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be
exactly
specific.
but
But what are we looking at here so that we can still say we have so long to go to get there?
Especially if we're going to be planning, saying within the next 10 years we need to be here. Within the next 10 years we need to be here. So in terms of how that is,
I think it all trickles down from the management of football in the country at the moment. Yes, we've seen the transition from the previous regime to this regime now, and we've seen a little bit of change that has come with it, which we are so much grateful. But talking about what Cynthia asked me, I think football in Kenya has a long way to go still. We are struggling in the sense that you can find clubs that are going months without paying their players. Some months
even now?
Yeah, it happens even now. And some clubs are paying. So if you get that into your mind, like you're going to play a player that hasn't been paid for months, and you receive your salaries every month, you see your state and your mental capacity at the moment will not enable you to perform at your optimum best. So I think such things, when they are looked into, and most of us say that for you to perform, you have to be stable, and stability comes in from your mind to your everything. When you balance your people and your guys are okay, that's where stability comes in, and your mind is now focused on the game. And now with a focused mind, I think you can be able to achieve your best.
Perform.
But then, that then needs, or at least leans more into the side of sponsorships.
Yes.
And we talked about earlier about media rights and being able to broadcast and say, okay, fine, we're going to pay. But so I'm looking at the fact that I know for a fact gate charges are not high enough to say you'd have to pack a stadium probably 4 times over before you can say from gate charges then clubs can take away some money, for development, either for youth academies or ensure that salaries are paid and things like that. So how do you then get stadiums to be packed? And I'm coming from the point of saying, and this is something as we discussed previously, for fans to say, okay, fine, I need to come to a stadium to watch a game? Gor Mahia versus Mathare United.
I guess transparency first.
Mm-hmm.
If the fans see what their money is doing, I know they're going to come to the stadiums.
Mm.
But if they come, they attend this match, and then after the match, they don't know even the total amount of that match day. So they will start being pushing away from the team.
Okay.
So we need to be transparent, and as teams, we need to improve the way we play. We need to be more entertaining.
But okay, that's the question we had asked before. Is it that our football is bad, and this now leans to Bundesliga, Serie A, and what have you? Our football is not bad. It's just that the EPL packages their experience, or they package what they're promising a lot better than what Africa as a continent is doing. So that's where I'm probably looking at that perspective. In terms of our football, I think our football is fantastic for the African continent. I mean, half the French team,
African.
So from that perspective, we play good ball.
Right.
Before we wrap up, I want to ask. I'll start with Captain.
Yeah.
Captain. 2 questions. Number 1, your top 4 finishing predictions for CHAN 2024, and then your top 4 for EPL. By the way, who do you support in EPL?
EPL, Liverpool.
Okay. You've got one.
I've got one. I've had 3 today. Come on.
All right.
I've had 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So top 4 EPL. Top 4 CHAN 24 and top 4 EPL.
I'll start with the final. I see Kenya playing Algeria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kenya v Algeria.
Yeah.
3rd and 4th place.
Morocco, Tanzania.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We will be on the 30th of August.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I need to bring you back in studio.
It's okay.
EPL.
EPL, Liverpool, of course.
Yeah.
Number 2, Chelsea, then
Okay.
Manchester City, and then Arsenal.
Oh, okay.
You're upsetting Chris.
Chris is sitting very close to you.
Number 15.
Liverpool,
Number
Chelsea,
15.
Number 15.
Yeah, number
Okay.
15.
Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, and Arsenal.
And Arsenal.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Chris.
So I'll just pick it from where he left.
Okay.
I'll start with EPL.
So,
With whatever order, I'll start with Manchester.
Okay.
That's one. Chelsea 4th.
Chelsea 4th.
Yes.
Okay. 2 and 3.
Arsenal 3rd as usual. And then Liverpool.
Okay.
Liverpool in 2nd place.
Yes.
All right.
At least he holds us in
Give
high
him a decent second. That's not bad.
Yeah.
And then CHAN 2024.
CHAN, I'd root for Kenya.
Mm.
And
Yes.
then 2, 3, 4.
Morocco might come somewhere 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? Tanzania 4th.
Okay.
Tanzania 4th, somewhere 4th there.
Mm-hmm.
And who will I give the 3rd spot?
Defending champions. You're not giving them any spot.
No, people mean business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people mean business.
Defending or not, doesn't
Defending or
matter
not,
here.
yeah.
All right.
Who will I give? Algeria. Yes.
All right.
Okay. Again, we'll invite you back in studio on the 30th of August. Yeah.
Let's see what that looks like.
All right, guys, thank you so much. This has been a brilliant conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of stuff in terms of understanding it from a player's perspective as opposed to just looking at it from a top-down kind of level. But thank you for taking the time for coming in.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
That's it on this episode of Panel 54, where we rethink the world, one African perspective at a time. If it made you pause, reflect, or reframe, share it, start a conversation, and tag us. Find us on social media handles at Panel54Pod and your favorite streaming platforms. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep the lens clear. A global perspective through an African lens.